The movie begins with a voiceover of a young girl called Lily, telling someone called Elliot that she had a dream of the future of an Earth that had finished all its resources. For years, people exhausted the new red moon they had found, the so-called Lumina. But one day, things changed the course of the red moon, charging it directly to the Earth. Protected by an impenetrable magnetic field, only one astronaut was able to stop it, but as his mission got close, he disappeared. Out on the barren lands outside the Great Wall, Paul staggers on the rocky ground of the now empty Earth. A voice in his head urges him to continue his journey and seek the truth. Paul heads past the wall and to one of the towns where the few survivors lived. While he is walking around, he hears an announcement made by the government that the borders were closed until further notice. After accidentally bumping into a man, Paul asks him where he would be able to find a taxi rank. Looking around to make sure that they weren't being seen, the man tells him to follow him because he has something Paul might like. The man known as Caesar takes Paul to his house and shows him his flying car. Paul asks Caesar if it was for sale, and the man tells him that he can buy anything in the garage. Caesar explains that he had lived inside the wall for 15 years and had never seen anyone crazy enough to drive out of the protection of the wall. Curious, Caesar asks if it was about a girl and laughs when Paul confirms that it was. The two men negotiate a price for the car after Caesar tells Paul that the car was fully charged and he would be able to drive for months. After receiving his payment, Caesar tells Paul that no one really knows what's out there, and he shouldn't find out either. As soon as Paul drives out of the garage, the house is flooded by the police after getting a tip of the transaction from their drones. On the way, a new broadcasting announced that there were only 7 days and a few hours left for the end of the world. The female voice in his head keeps telling him to find the forest. Suddenly, the car starts to show a power outage and shuts down. Paul is angry, realizing that the man who had sold him the car had swindled him. As he tries to fix the car, he sees one of the tracking drones and hurries to get his gun to shoot it down before it could report his whereabouts. Paul then pushes the car down the road until he comes to a trailer that was used as a small market. The market clerk, a short-haired, petite woman, asks him what he wanted. Paul asks the woman if she had batteries he could use to start his car. She tells him the price and explains that he would need to wait 3 days. While he's negotiating the price, Paul notices the news on the TV behind the woman, informing the public that although the government had tried to send probes up to the red moon, they were unable to go through the impenetrable magnetic field. One of the shuttles, called Aurora, was the Earth's last hope and was being piloted by none other than the famous astronaut and Paul's brother, Elliot. Paul and the woman watch live as Elliot documents his trip, finally making it through the magnetic field. Once he goes through, he realizes that the entry speed was too fast and asks to abort the mission. The control center informs him that he must continue ahead, but the shuttle is unable to withstand the heat and burns up. Paul decides to get some rest in his car and is awakened by the nightmares of his past and how he had been hit by a bolt of lightning from the red moon, forcing him to take constant medication. In her trailer, the market clerk, Elma, sees the image of Paul on her TV, the background sound explaining that he was one of the most successful astronauts who had gotten closer to the red moon than anyone before. Realizing that he was important, Elma finds Paul out fixing his car and offers him canned food. She asks him if he was the same Paul that the news was speaking about, and he tells her that he wasn't, asking her to leave him alone. Elma, unhappy with her life in the middle of nowhere, asks Paul if she could come with him, but he refuses. That night, Elma watches the news as the disappearance of Paul wrecked the world, the expectations of the people leaning heavily on his shoulder. Out in the middle of nowhere, Elliot's pod lands on Earth after he attempts to breach the red moon. After constant medical attention, the doctors inform him that the contact with the Luminar had mutated his genes, making him able to come back to life after not having a pulse for several hours. Once Elliot feels better, he heads out to find his missing brother. In the desert, Elma goes back to her house and discovers that her trailer has been destroyed by the previous owner of the market. This man had always tried to pursue a romantic relationship with her. The next morning, Elliot arrives at the market out in the desert after getting reports that his brother had been there. Elliot had developed the ability to read minds and concentrate on the man's thoughts, mentally forcing him to commit suicide while Elma watches from the window. Screaming from fear, Elma runs out into the desert, escaping the murderous man. Paul finds Elma out in the middle of nowhere and feels sorry for her, letting her stay in his car. Inside the car, Paul tells her that the journey with him would be dangerous, but she insists on coming with him, threatening to tell everyone where he is if he doesn't take her with him. Paul makes a deal, telling her that she could travel with him for a day and she would be on her own after that. On the road, Elma asks Paul why he wouldn't go through the mission, but he tells her not to bother him with questions. After driving for hours, the two stop at one of the diners on on the road so that Paul can make a call to his father, asking if his brother was dead. Paul's father, Henri, tells his son that his brother was doing fine and tells him that he needs to return to complete the mission. While on the phone, Paul is startled by a soldier who had been looking for him. Paul tries to escape by attacking the man in heavy armor, but is unable to land a proper punch due to the layers of protective clothing. Trying to help her friend, Elma shoots the soldier with Paul's gun, giving him enough time for Paul to overpower the man. The two hurry out of the diner and rush to their car. Elma tries to calm herself by choosing new names for Paul so they can escape being detected. Elma assured Paul that he will get captured without her help, but she would only be willing to do so if he tells her what was going on. Paul tells her that he used to have visions when he was a child. At the time, his father's project was going great, and they had already started to mine the lumina on the red moon. Paul had known that what they were doing was wrong, but couldn't exactly explain why. Paul gathered all of the information he could about the red moon and found out that it wasn't the first time that it had crossed paths with Earth, bringing change every time it arrived. Paul had shown his father what he had found and told him that he needed to leave the red moon alone. While Elma dyes Paul's hair makes him less inconspicuous, he tells her that his father and the other researchers had assumed they could predict the trajectory of the moon, but they were mistaken. Elliot arrives at the diner Paul and Elma had been at and asks the owner if she had seen Paul. She explains that she had, but he didn't look like the person she had seen on TV, seeming rundown from exhaustion. She also tells him that he was traveling with a young girl. Once he gets the necessary information from the woman, Elliot gets inside her mind and forces her to kill herself by making her stick a fork in an electric wire. Out in the desert, Paul and Elma lay down on the hood of his car, enjoying the night air. Showing her the picture of the first he carries around, Paul tells her that he is on a journey to find that place that would help him understand what the red moon wanted. Tired from the long journey, the travel companions decide to get some sleep. The next morning, Paul and Elma start their journey early and are surprised by a car following them. Up their head, they see a large red dust cloud headed their way. By using the cloud to give them cover, Paul avoids the car that had been following him, not knowing that it was only his brother. After making sure that they were safe, Paul shows Elma a video of the diverse animals France had before the Great Extinction. While looking at the footage, Paul sees a vast forest and realizes it was the same place as his picture. Thinking he had been stupid to hope to find the place, Paul tells Elma that he was giving up. Elma calms him down and tells him to have hope in an attempt to keep him from disappearing again. Angry, Paul tells her to leave him alone and goes to sleep. In the morning, Paul is woken up by a panicking Elma, who tells him that they have been found by soldiers dressed in all armor as well as his brother. In an attempt to escape, Paul tries to use Elma as a hostage, but the men don't care, shooting her in the stomach. Paul drags her body to the car as an array of bullets fall upon them, driving away in a rush. Elliot follows his brother, adamant about not letting him get away a second time. The radio in the car announces that they would be arriving at a checkpoint in a few meters, which makes Paul panic. Asking him to pass her the interface, Elma calibrates the car so it's able to fly away, missing the soldiers at the checkpoint. Before he could manage to maneuver the car away, he sees his brother Elliot charging directly towards him, causing the car to crash. Paul drags himself out of the car and meets his brother, who had also managed to survive. Trying to keep his brother from taking him back, Paul pulls a gun out and tells Elliot to stop advancing. Elliot tells Paul that he was the only one who would be able to destroy the red moon, and he was sure that his father would force him into doing it. Unwilling to destroy the moon, Paul points the gun at his own head and threatens to pull the trigger. Laying on the ground, Elma begs Paul not to do it. Keeping his promise to Elma, Paul turns the gun around to Elliot and shoots him in the head, after quickly going to his injured friend and carefully lifts her up, hoping to find someone who can assist them. Paul then embarks on a lengthy journey, carrying Elma on his back, with the goal of getting her the medical help she needs. Eventually, after a tiring trip, Paul arrives back at his father's place, bringing Elma along. Paul is prepared to undergo the mission and is taken to the massive spaceship. Once he is launched into space, Paul struggles to control the ship as it fights to leave the atmosphere. When he gets to the moon, Paul cuts the connections with his father, leading the shuttle away. Paul activates the ship's self-destruct button, blowing up the ship so it cannot be used to hurt the moon. Down on Earth, Elma has gotten the medical care she needs and heads out into the desert to watch the sky, hoping that Paul would return safely. As she looks up, she sees a huge explosion and realizes that Paul had chosen to self-destruct the ship. Elma cries, kneeling on the desert floor, mourning her lost friend, and with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.